All right, let's dive right in. Today we're going to be looking at Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, specifically law number 8, which is all about making other people come to you using bait if necessary.
Well, this is the good one.
Yeah, and it's about getting what you want
Yeah.
without even really seeming to try.
Yeah, that's right. It's about strategic control. It's not about forcing your way or anything, but it's about understanding what makes people tick and using that knowledge to kind of influence outcomes.
So to illustrate this, let's look at Napoleon's escape from Elba, a classic
There
example.
you go. Definitely a classic example.
Also, Napoleon, he gets exiled to this tiny island kingdom. It's almost like a mockery of his former power, right?
Exactly. They wanted to make him look harmless, irrelevant after everything he'd done.
But Napoleon, he wasn't going to fade away quietly. He escapes, makes this dramatic return to France, even raises an army along the way. And for a while, it looks like he might actually pull off another impossible victory.
Right. And it's right here that things get really interesting. Because you see, Napoleon's escape, it wasn't just some desperate gamble. It was all part of a bigger plan, orchestrated by someone who knew Napoleon better than almost anyone. His former foreign minister, Talleyrand.
Wait a minute, Talleyrand. I thought he was supposed to be on Napoleon's side.
Well, Talleyrand, he was a shrewd operator, let's say. He knew Napoleon was a threat to the stability of Europe, so he basically used his knowledge of Napoleon's ambition, his desire for glory, to bait him into a trap.
So Talleyrand actually wanted Napoleon to escape. He knew Napoleon would try to come back and seize power.
Exactly. He knew Napoleon couldn't resist the temptation. And by letting Napoleon come to him, exhaust himself in this doomed campaign, Talleyrand would ultimately be the one dictating the terms.
Wow, that's some next-level strategy.
Yeah.
So this idea of making your opponent come to you, is that the core of Law 8?
Yeah, it's absolutely a fundamental principle. When you make the other party come to you, you gain this strategic advantage. You set the stage, you control the engagement, and you really increase your chances of achieving your desired outcome.
And this isn't just for, historical battles or anything. This applies to all kinds of situations.
Absolutely. Negotiations, job interviews, even personal relationships. Think about it when someone feels like they're in control. They're way more likely to be receptive to your ideas. You're not forcing anything on them. You're creating this environment where they come to you willingly.
Okay, so we've seen how Talleyrand used bait to outmaneuver Napoleon. What are some other examples of this law in action? I need something juicy.
Okay, well, how about the Russo-Japanese War in 1905? The Japanese, they knew the Russian fleet had limitations, so they essentially lured them on this incredibly long journey across the globe. By the time the two navies actually met for the decisive battle, the Russians were exhausted and demoralized. It was brilliant strategic baiting.
So choosing the right bait is crucial. You need to know exactly what motivates the other person, what will make them act.
Right, it's like you're dangling this carrot in front of them, leading them exactly where you want them to go. And this brings up a really interesting question. Is it always better to be subtle and deceptive? Or are there times when it's more effective to let the other person know you're manipulating them?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Sometimes being too obvious can backfire, but sometimes a bold move can be really effective. It's like that story of Filippo Brunelleschi, the Renaissance artist. He pretended to be sick to regain control of a project.
Brunelleschi understood the power of perception. By making those city officials come to him begging for his return, he not only secured his position, but he established this precedent of power.
So it's not just about manipulating the situation, it's about sending a message.
Absolutely. You're making sure people understand who's really in control. Even a single instance of someone coming to you can shift that whole power dynamic, establish this pattern of deference and respect.
This is making me think about everyday interactions in a whole new light.
That's the power of understanding these laws. They can help you see things from a different perspective, give you a deeper understanding of human behavior, and those subtle forces at play in every interaction.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So much to think about.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've been talking about these big historical power plays, but how does this idea of making people come to you, how does that actually play out in more everyday situations?
Well, let's look at pickpockets. Robert Greene talks about them in the book.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how they use this very simple tactic to their advantage.
Pickpockets, really? I'm intrigued.
Yeah, you know those signs you see in crowded tourist areas? The ones that say, beware of pickpockets.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Pickpockets actually love those signs.
Oh, come on, really? That seems counterintuitive. Why would they want people to be on guard?
Because they actually play right into their strategy. When you see that sign, what do? You instinctively check your pockets.
Yeah, I guess you're right. You want to make sure your wallet's still there.
Exactly, and that's what they're counting on. You're revealing the location of your valuables.
Wow, that's so sneaky.
It's subtle but incredibly effective.
So they're manipulating you without even having to touch you.
It's like psychological sleight of hand.
It really is.
And this brings up a crucial point. We're constantly reacting to cues in our environment, often without even realizing it.
Yeah, that's true.
And understanding this can be really powerful, both for influencing others and for protecting ourselves from being manipulated.
So it's about being aware, not just of the bait,
Yeah.
but of the whole context,
Mhm.
the things that might be influencing our behavior.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about this idea of the reversal. Green mentions it in the book. We've been focusing on patience waiting for your opponent to come to you. But are there times when a more direct approach is necessary?
Yeah, sometimes waiting around can actually backfire.
Right, so the reversal is about understanding that sometimes swift, decisive action can be more effective than any carefully laid plan.
So sometimes you got to just go for it.
Exactly, and this is especially true with weaker opponents, or when speed and surprise can give you a big advantage.
Like a lightning strike.
Exactly, overwhelm them before they even have a chance to react.
So who were some masters of this approach?
Well, figures like Caesar Borgia, and ironically, Napoleon himself, they often use these rapid attacks to intimidate their opponents, leaving them no time to plan a defense.
But wouldn't that make them predictable?
Well, that's where the art of knowing when to apply which tactic comes in. Sometimes a calculated risk, a sudden burst of energy, can completely change the game.
So you have to assess the situation and your opponent.
Exactly. Understand their strengths and weaknesses, and then choose the approach that gives you the best chance of success.
So there's no one-size-fits-all approach to power.
Right. It's about adapting to the specific circumstances.
Makes sense.
Law 8 is a powerful tool, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. True mastery lies in understanding the nuances of power, knowing when to be subtle, when to be bold, and most importantly, when to let the other person come to you.
All right, so we've covered so much ground here. Baiting, reversals, pickpockets, Napoleon. It's been quite a journey. But let's bring this back to our listeners. What does all of this mean for them in their everyday lives?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Law 8 is about recognizing that power. It isn't always about force or domination. It's often about understanding these subtle dynamics of influence and positioning yourself strategically.
Right, it's like a mental chess game. You have to anticipate your opponent's moves, set traps, and control the board without them even realizing it.
And that's why self-awareness is so crucial. You need to understand your own strengths and weaknesses. You know your tendencies, your reactions. If you're not aware of your own patterns, you're more susceptible to being manipulated.
So it's not just about learning how to bait others. It's about recognizing when someone's trying to bait us, like those pickpockets with their sign.
Exactly. Awareness is key. Once you start to see these dynamics at play, you can make more conscious choices about how you engage with the world.
And that in itself is empowering. Like once you understand the rules of the game, you can choose to play it differently.
Absolutely. Law 8 isn't about becoming some Machiavellian mastermind, plotting and scheming. It's about taking control of your interactions, your relationships, your destiny.
That's a great point. So if our listeners could take away just one thing from this deep dive into Law 8, what would it be?
I would say start paying attention to the subtle dynamics of power in your own life. Observe how people react to you, how you react to them. Identify situations where you could use the principles of baiting and, strategic maneuvering to achieve your goals.
And remember, this isn't about being manipulative or unethical. It's about using your knowledge wisely and ethically in a way that benefits everyone involved.
Exactly. It's about understanding that power is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. The choice is ultimately yours.
Well said. A huge thank you to our expert for this amazing discussion.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, remember, knowledge is power. Use it wisely. And don't forget to check out the other 47 laws. There's a whole world of wisdom and strategy out there. Until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.